Well, hello everybody, and welcome out to your Monday night. Hopefully you are enjoying your night. If you are in kind of a crazy part of the country, hopefully you're staying safe. And if you're tuning into us at the same time, thanks. All right, we definitely appreciate that. But we were kind of discussing some of the weather things in different parts of this country, and it's insane out there right now. So thank you, and be safe no matter where you're at with whatever you're doing. We're going to be talking about some cool things and some not so cool things, but we are looking forward to some feedback from you. So obviously, as we go throughout these different pieces tonight, drop your stuff in the chat. Feel free to fill us in on what's going on around you or what you're seeing, and we'll take it from there, of course.
We got people jumping in. Mikey, Robin's there. I've got a couple of people that are showing up as Facebook user. I'm sorry, I don't know who you are, but welcome. It's great to see
Maybe
you.
that's their profile name. Maybe it is Facebook user.
Facebook user. I guess I never
That's
thought
my
about that.
secret identity. Shh.
Troll.
You just
Don't you know that's what WTF stands for? Welcome to Facebook.
Welcome to Facebook.
Oh,
Right.
okay. That's good to know.
Right?
Yeah, they say that a lot around.
Oh,
Yeah, someone posts something online, you're like, oh, you must be new.
Is Restream down?
WTF.
Hang on. Oh, no, here we go. It can't pop back. Yeah, typically Restream is pretty solid, but it looks like they must have had a burp there.
Are we back?
I think I saw. There we
I
go.
didn't click. I don't have it. I only have the chat open.
Yep, it looks like we must be back.
So wherever you're watching from, thanks for watching.
There we go. Excellent. There we. And I see Howard's
in the chat.
Oh, they're jumping in. It's kind of interesting when you can see that pops into our chat, the Restream chat, and then you see it on the YouTube chat. It doesn't
faster
show.
over here.
Yep, it can be faster there. And there's times where it's the other way around. So tonight, guys, what I wanted to kind of dig into is we're getting as weird as this year has been. Not as weird as last year, but it's been an unusual year for a lot of the folks out there. We're getting to the end of wedding season in the upper Midwest specifically. We end generally in October, early October, maybe mid-October, because it gets too cold. Some places they are getting into kind of their wedding season, and they like down in Robin down in her neck of the woods. They're probably going to be, once hurricane season over, then they actually can go out and do some shows. So it varies, but for a lot of us, weddings, we get into the time of the year where we'd be doing other events. And tonight we're going to kind of talk a little bit and dig into what this fall could look like and what we should be thinking about as we get ourselves into that season and as we work our way through winter and looking ahead into 2022. So that's where I kind of was thinking we could go tonight. Elite Events, thank you for joining us out there.
When you put this subject up, is my mic okay? It seems really loud here.
I think it's
good to me.
Good. Okay, it sounds loud in my ear. Is the noise in my head bothering you?
Yes, it is. It is. That's
all the time.
I mean, how many times do we have to listen to Thank God I'm a Country Boy?
It's in my head.
Yeah.
No, when you put up the subject for tonight about as seasons change in the business, my side of the business doesn't change much. So I figured tonight I'd just shut off my bike and just sit here and nod all night, if that's what you want.
That would be great, man.
Might be the highest view show ever.
Boy, MJ's really looking smart tonight. It's like, yes, he's being very thoughtful. So let's
just
kind
the
of
camera angle.
Let's kind of start with MJ. What you have seen, and we've talked off camera a little bit about what you have been doing this summer. For those of you who haven't been following us for quite a while, Dan teaches during the week, wedding DJ on the weekends. Myself, I do this during the week, and then weekends would be doing weddings and then getting into some high school as Dan does some school things. But that's our primary is more the wedding side of it, where MJ is doing more club type things. Has really been a big part of his business for the last number of years. So, MJ, how has this summer been different than like 2019 for you as far as where your events have been coming from?
None of the places I worked prior to the COVID are either open or have brought back any sort of entertainment that involves like groups. Like there are some places where I DJ'd at where now the only thing they're doing is maybe stand-up comedy night or trivia night, and that's as far as they're going. So all the places I worked prior to this, I'm not working them. So everything I'm doing now is new. The way I think of things is really, and again, I hope this is not going too far into topics that people don't want to hear about, but with my faith, God just opens doors. When one closes, another one opens, and I was blessed to get a couple different venues now that are really paying off. They're liking me, and I'm getting to do a lot of work there. So that's one of the things that it's different. I'm at different places than I was. For what I do, there are some of those gigs that are now in full swing because they're in the school areas, the college towns and stuff like that. And this season is the one where it picks up between bars, specialty parties, Christmas events, fall formals, etc., stuff like that. So it does pick up a little bit on that, but for the most part in my business, as Dan commented a couple weeks ago when he saw the pictures of the one, there's not a lot being held back right now. Everyone is just doing what they've ever done without a thought in the world. So, it's not much different.
So I got a quick question before John jumps into a little bit further. You mentioned obviously none of the ones that you had before COVID came out are doing things. How often do you go through a location turnaround, I guess, for lack of better terms, or we're just talking 2 years ago. Is it common that in 2 years' time you might be at a completely different set of places? Like, assuming COVID hadn't happened, would you have expected to still be at those places you were 2 years ago?
I would, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the one place, two of the places are still open. But like I said, they don't have, the other one used to have DJs every Thursday, Friday, Saturday. They have no DJs now. So because it was a place that was kind of a college bar, and DJs would come in every single Thursday, Friday, Saturday. No DJs, no nothing. Jukebox only. The other place had an upstairs and a downstairs. They did food. They're doing stand-up open mic, and they're doing trivia night, which is everybody sits at their tables. And the guy he said, I'm thinking about just killing the dance floor thing. So it's a place that it's still there, that if he would have people to come back, which I kind of have feeling when it's fall, like I said, because all these fall formals, they would get booked ahead of the time when it opened for formals. So he'd give me a call and say, can you come in 2 hours early, such and such a night, because they're going to have such and such fraternity is going to have a party here and they want a DJ. So it's from like 2 hours, and then the club opens up to the normal thing. And I have a feeling when they start that and throwing money at him, he's going to be like, yeah, can you come back maybe one night a week or something? So other than that, like I said, it's just kind of changed. In the other places that I'm at now, like both casinos and in the club down at WU, is business as usual for that. They don't change much at all. I mean, I was at the casinos while COVID was going on, when you still had to be, can we say the C word without being Facebook killing us? Because I'm hearing a lot of people saying that they don't even say that word anymore because they're afraid of getting demonetized and stuff.
I don't. I think it depends on how it's being utilized and
because everybody I'm seeing using the word jab. If you get the jab,
yeah,
they don't talk about anything but that. Like that, literally, they won't talk about that. But like I said, while that was still going on, I was still at those places and they were open. They were limited on things, but when it comes to businesses that make money, they just trug through, sometimes beyond the rules even. So I don't really get a seasonal thing. To answer Dan's question, a lot of those I would still be there, but businesses do turn over. There's been restaurants that have been for like 5 years, and then they maybe don't have as much business as before, so the owner will close it down, rename it, open it back up. They do that a lot. They used to call it the 1,000-day rule. So after 1,000 days, you're no longer relevant.
Yep.
Close down, reopen, redecorate, new name, new business,
and
that sort of thing, which you saw a lot of. But a lot of the stuff, like I said, the stuff that is that I think some of them just looked at a tiny overhead of having a DJ in and said, is it really worth it? If they can close down at 11 p.m. as opposed to 2 a.m., and not worry that much about, only having drink income after 11 p.m. when the kitchen closes, sort of thing. Is it really worth it?
So at one time when you were talking about, people could go and there were DJs up and down the streets.
Mm-hmm.
Is the capacity for the DJs at half of what it was in
full? Those places, to the point where recently one of the streets, they've decided to do a safety thing because it's so packed that the sidewalks overflow into the street. So they started a thing on Fridays and Saturdays where there's blocks of it where the only traffic allowed to go through there is city buses, fire, and police. It's that packed of people to where they can't even let cars go through there. So you have to use all the side streets that go along with it. So every one of those places is packed to the hilt. All of them have DJs. It just happened to be, like I said, my two were up around the college, and everybody freaked out. Mm-hmm. The college has a lot of rules. Like they're doing rules now to where staff and students, one of them up there, staff and students have to have the jab to go. Like you can't, if you don't get it, you can't be a teacher and you can't go to class. So there's all little things like that everybody's freaking out. But the other ones are just down in the city where it's a free-for-all, packed, exchanging germs right and left. Mm-hmm. But then, and everything you can imagine they're exchanging.
Yeah, and obviously the age of the crowd. You're talking a 21 to probably about 27-year-old crowd.
Yeah.
If that, 21 to 25-year-old crowd. Something
you
to that.
would rarely find someone over 30 at those places.
Yeah.
Like especially the one college I do down in West Virginia, it's 18 and over. So you still have to be 21 to get the wristband, but we have a big portion of our people are 18 to 20. So, and that's a whole different demographic on everything you do. Music-wise, the way you play it, it's a whole different mentality.
So one of the things, and you kind of made mention to this when it came to when the kitchen closed down, that we're starting to see here in central Minnesota is that because of the bar, the little bar that would have had a DJ or entertainment, it used to be that entertainment was always 8 to 12 or maybe 9 to 1. Most bars in Minnesota shut down at 1. I'm seeing more that are doing 8 to or 7 to 10. And they're shutting down, wrapping up after the meal. You're seeing more one-man bands than I've ever seen before have come. And obviously the demographic age-wise is a lot different in rural Minnesota. Yes, we do have younger people. I mean, that's not that we don't. But in a college town, it's going to be a little bit different. But when you're talking about a rural bar/club or small little nightclub, there's been a change with that, and that's what they've gone to. And I've talked to a couple of them and they're like, I make more money doing that than we did from that 11 o'clock till 1 a.m. because by then they were drunk and they were nursing one bottle of beer for the last 90 minutes and causing trouble.
Yeah, the two things that I think you should take away from that, like from the college kids, a lot of those would drink before they would go to the bar because they would save money that way. So the late night people who were coming there weren't buying a lot because they were already pretty drunk. Mm-hmm. But also when you talked about the times, I know around here there were several either 24-hour grocery stores or really late night stuff. I can't find a grocery store near me that's open past midnight now. And it's because I'm a late night person where after I'm done DJing at 2 a.m., I usually have 2 or 3 places that used to be able to go to, and they're all shutting down early. You look at Harbor Freight. It's usually something you would think would be open till like 9 o'clock in the shopping center, whatever you call the strip malls. 7 p.m. they're done. Best Buy, 7 p.m. they're done. They're all doing this early stuff now because the extra hours don't add up as much as they thought. Now they get it. Everybody wanted that 24-hour life, and when they got away from it, they said, we really don't need it. It doesn't benefit us that much. So that's something that I think could work over into a lot of other businesses. Yeah,
I think so, and I think that's as we go into the fall for a lot of us. Mikey Mike with us tonight mentioned that is doing a local bar. Must be doing it on a semi-regular basis. I would take from that he's doing it from 7 until 10. We're going to have different hours. It's not going to be the traditional late night type of event. So for those of wedding people like myself who would pick up some small bars around the area working in the winter, we may not be looking at the 9 to 1 anymore. It might be something.
I know a lot of guys that picked up happy hour gigs. So like 5 to 7 done. And they're happy with the pay they're getting for that. So that's something that's neat. I'm actually looking at a couple places offering it for that.
Yeah.
If I can fit maybe that in a regular night of stuff too.
Oh yeah, for sure. And walk in with a controller and or a laptop.
Or 1 or 2 speakers max.
Yeah.
No lights, no nothing.
Yeah, that would be a neat way to find some additional income, for surely. So we've got that. You mentioned Best Buy, so that'll take us into the direction of corporate. This is an area that's become kind of concerning. Now, for those of you in the chat room right now, if you're booking corporate things or you have some corporate things on the books that have happened recently, share that, kind of let us know if you have. What we have seen, talking to some people that book a lot of some of the multi-systems friends of mine, is their corporate. This is their time of the year when they're really busy booking Christmas parties. Some of them have canceled their Christmas party. Some of them have basically said, we can't make a decision, so we're going to probably say no because it's unlikely we will say yes. The corporate maybe, which at one time my corporates took off basically from the after Thanksgiving to the week before Christmas. We were doing at one time 25, 30 events during that window of time. It's slowed down here for us for a number of years, but this year we're not even hearing of venues. They're like they've got crickets going on.
Yeah, my friend AJ does a lot of corporate events, and he said this month alone he had more than six cancel. Said we're not going to do our corporate event in the fall at all.
There's been a lot of pullback. I've noticed. So I had a couple photo booth gigs who kind of reached out. They were doing some different things for some of the colleges, but it was like the corporate people that were reaching out from the college to set it up. And we're going through everything, and all of a sudden, like that was right about the time that they were starting to get a new talk of some bigger waves coming through. And I was like, so are we ready for a contract? And they're like, actually, we've just been told we're canceling the whole thing.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of this pullback that we're starting to see coming through, and I don't, I think a lot of them, they were gung ho 3 months ago, and now they're being cautious again.
Let's see. Sean mentions on Facebook, thanks for being with us, Sean. Christmas party scene has died in the area for years, kind of in the Chicago, Wisconsin area, so it must be the North Chicago. I would assume somewhere between Chicago and Milwaukee. Sean, Brat Shop, great place, got to say it. If you guys have ever, we'll have to do something in Milwaukee and go to the Brat Shop. It's this cool 80s. It looks like a scene. The place is almost like a scene out of the Blues Brothers. That type of a stage. If they put that chain link fence up there, lighting in there, the room and a sticky floor and everything. It's this coolest place in there. Brats, they've just fabulous brats.
Go to Wisconsin, get your brats.
Yeah, it was good, and I'm sure Sean's.
That's better than what I thought you were saying. I kept thought you were saying the broad bar.
No, it's a brat.
Really?
The brat. It's
only women are allowed it. No, wait, that's very sexist.
Yeah, no, they've got. Well, the negative thing is that they have so many of them, and they're all really. It's like you can't eat 10 brats, and they're big. So if you eat 2, you're going to be suffering. But gosh, you don't want to just take 1 because that's a waste of a trip. So you have to get 2, and then you will be paying.
I don't even know if I've ever eaten a brat, to be honest with you.
Oh man, anyway.
I just want to say, speaking on the way of people pronounce things, I was on a phone call the other day with Bill Herman, and he said karaoke. So it must be something from your area.
It's that Minnesota thing. It is a Minnesota thing. So the corporate things are drifting away, and we're not going to see much of those. Mikey mentions he's having a couple of things lined up, but it'll be interesting to see if those will stick. I'm really thinking that this is going to be one of those years where last year corporate didn't happen. This year, I think we're going to have a combination of corporate are going to be, if they were planning something and are not afraid of attendance due to COVID, and we'll get into that just a little bit. Part of it's going to be is do they have the money? Are they making enough sales? And we're seeing that in many of the manufacturers in the DJ industry. They can't get gear to sell gear. If they can't sell gear, they're not making money. If they aren't making money, they can't do advertising or whatever. That's where we run into it. It's just an interesting dichotomy we've got going on, and I don't think that's going to change in 2021. Truthfully, as we look, it's not. It'll maybe get slightly better, but then we get into the holiday rush, and all of a sudden the shipping lanes are filled with Amazon packages coming with my favorite little widget. So the corporate, I think, is something that typically would have been looking to carry, and I think once again it's probably not going to be a great option for a person going forward. Schools, Dan. You guys started back at school last week?
Today was our first day with kids. Yep.
Oh, today was first day with kids.
Yep.
How what has been the talk in the teachers lounge and the feeling in the teachers lounge with how successful it's going to be, keeping kids in school when we're hearing some of the schools have had some early difficulties with that.
So our particular district has kind of said we're going to do whatever the Department of Health or whatever CDC is saying. So when they say we're going to go masks, we're going to go masks. And in the meantime, until we have an issue, we're just going to abide by that. We're going to recommend it, but we're not going to mandate. A lot of the talk is really coming down to it's just a matter of time. It's just a matter of time before we're either fully remote or we're pulled back in to a lot of restrictions. I've been told kind of the chain of succession that's going to happen in order for that to happen for our local district. But in the same respect, like when I went to open house for my son's district, and we're going through them, they were saying it was a lot of, it was a lot of, this is what we're planning to do, but this is what we're expecting. Like almost, we're planning for, you're going to be here and we're going to be doing this, but by the end of this week, things might change. And so it wasn't like, yeah, things might change. It was like by the end of this week. Or by tomorrow, we might hear something. Wow. So there was very much this idea that we're going to get into it, but who knows what's going to happen here in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, last year when you guys came, because we all thought we were coming out of it in the summer last year, about when did you start feeling a little bit of that, hey, we're going to have to change things at the beginning of last year's school year? Like how far were you towards like the winter, like Thanksgiving in October and stuff? Did any of that happen then, or was it before?
You mean for this year currently, or for
when did it happen last year? I'm kind of gauging when that shift might, if it's typical of a certain pattern of life. When did it come around last year? Is that something we can look around about that time this year for people being more cautious, if they're being numbers up, all that sort of thing? Because there's patterns to all of this.
Yeah, I don't think we ever really got it. Last year was such a weird thing because, during the summer, you're right. We kind of got this idea, we're going to come out of it. School year's going to start and everything's going to be fine. Before the school year even started, we had a plan to be in hybrid and kids weren't going to move. They were going to be in one spot and the teachers were going to move and we were going to be masked all the time. And so there never really was this opportunity to kind of get this feeling that things are going to be normal. Before we ever really got to experience the year, we already knew it was going to be different. There was the talk that I think, when we got to about November, there was a lot of pressure for everybody to be in person, but it wasn't because this was the best option because things were going away. It was, this is what we're going to do because this is the best option for the kids learning. And so that kind of outweighed certain things, and it became a balancing act between the two. And when we came back, we never came back from Thanksgiving to Christmas, we stayed full remote. When we came back from that, we went back to full time, and we never deviated from that. It was more isolated groups that then had to do quarantining. This year, it's kind of we've gone back to almost business as usual with precautions in place. So there is some social distancing. We're still doing contact tracing. We're still doing all of those things, but it's not as rigid as it was before. Like before, it was like, listen, everybody's staying 6 feet apart. Don't you dare go near Joey because I'm going to then have to write you up. And your mask went down here. Oh no, pull it back up. There's none of that type of feeling going on. So the kids have kind of had this aloof type of attitude towards it, but there is definitely handfuls here and there which are like, they were full mask today and they didn't budge from it, and they had it wearing it the proper way and everything else. So it's roundabout way of saying it kind of is varying. You have some groups that are like, everything's normal, this doesn't exist, and other people are like, no, I'm going to be cautious, I'm going to do what I need to do until I'm told otherwise.
And last year, the kids here started, we had a mask mandate in Minnesota, so every school had that. The sports seasons were pushed back because they felt that they wanted the kids in the classroom and that the sports were going to be just non-existent last fall. And then into the fall, Parents pushed hard, and then they had a shortened football season, a shortened athletic season that functioned to a level until we got into it was about the second week of October. So we were out of July, we came down. August was was low, September was really low, and then we got in that second week of October. I mean, there was a little bumps in there, but nothing, and then it just took off. Then we did, as Dan said, we got to that Thanksgiving time, and that was it. It's like, okay, it's not safe to be anywhere. You've got to stay, and the kids were that way here also. The difference being here right now is we've entered into, right now we're in mid-October in how the cases and things are going around. So how our schools, there's no mask mandate, so they're going to try to keep kids, they want to try to still distance the kids from each other, doing similar to what Dan was just describing. And it may work, it may not, whatever the resultant of that. But from our standpoint as DJs, what is this, how is this going to look for homecoming dances? Because that's somebody, Sean, I think, was mentioning that the biggest thing is looking at homecomings and fall weddings. Well, we'll jump back to weddings at a time, but I want to hit the homecomings. We've got our 3 homecomings, and the schools have already asked what our cancellation policy will be.
So my district, the school that I actually teach in, they typically do, it's middle school, and they typically do a like dance around Halloween, and you get the chance to kids to dress up and have a good night and whatever. And it's a fundraiser for one of our rewards programs for the school. And we have a date. We have it already kind of scheduled, but meeting last week was, we're gonna see if the school board's gonna allow it here, and we're gonna wait. And just the way it was worded, which was basically like, if you told me the dance was tomorrow night, I think my one principal even said this: if you tell me the dance is tomorrow night, I can tell you right now the answer would have been no. Mm-hmm. Now, the end of October, we'll see what we don't.
Yeah, there's so many just predicting. And you mentioned the not knowing, what's going to happen by the end of the week. There's the in Minnesota with the superintendents have been talking, and the word came out from one of their recent meetings is that once the kids are in school, and if there's a little bit of a flare-up, that's going to be the opportunity to put in a school-wide mask mandate. They would like to do that. Many schools have tried it in Minnesota. A couple have done it. But then they're taking backlash from parents saying basically, well, we're moving our kids to a different school that doesn't require face masks, which there are going to be some of those private schools that will do that because of their connections or however they're
who's paying.
They're paying, and that's going to be a big part of it. But those things, I mean, if we get a school that goes to a mask mandate, homecoming dances are done. It's just not going to happen. It's not like prom where it's a once in a lifetime thing type of thing, and they would try to make it work. I don't think we're going to see that with junior high dances. I don't think we're going to see that even with homecoming dances. I don't think it has enough.
Doesn't carry the same weight, that's for sure. And some of it's kind of interesting. You mentioned there, like, we have some districts that are kind of almost at odds. Like, there's a district, like you said, that's doing full mask mandate. One who said, we're going to do this until this date, and then we're going to reapproach it. And this date is like in a week from now. But then there's another district who has said, we're not going to do it even where federal guidelines say we should. We're not going to do it at all. And so, and the two districts are maybe 15 miles apart from each other. Not drastically where you say, okay, well, there's a 40 minute difference between the two. No, they're not next door to each other, but they're pretty darn close. And so it's just kind of interesting to see how certain districts are kind of playing that chess piece. And like you said, if the mask mandate is in place, I really don't see them. I say that, but I say that, but I also saw like a lot of districts who said, you know what, we're going to do prom and we're going to do it with masks.
Mm-hmm. I think that's what I'll try to do here.
I do wonder if there will be some concession made to try and appease some families and some pushes. Listen, okay, we're going to keep the homecoming thing, but there's going to be masks. Very similar to what prom was done, or doing it on a much smaller scale. I know you're going to have districts that are going to be like, listen, we're not taking that risk. We're not doing it. Sorry,
there will be some.
It's not happening. But I do see some that are going to try and toe that line of being able to go, listen, we've kind of gypped them enough. Let's see if we can try and at least give them this, but these are going to be the guidelines. These are going to be the rules that we put in place, especially if they had success doing it for prom. If they got through prom without any issues following, if they, without any backlash, I could see them trying to do something the same here.
Jumping up to Sean mentions, I think it was Sean mentioned that some of the schools have been calling around, struggling to find DJs for homecoming. And I think that's probably what we're going to see when it comes to these high school dances, is that it's going to be a wait and see. The school will pick a date, and they're probably not going to contract with a DJ until 10 days before, the week before, when they get an idea that, hey, we can actually do this. I wouldn't be surprised if that's going to be part of this year's school year, where there's going to be this window, and there aren't any cases. No kids are out on quarantine. Let's do something.
Is he meaning that schools can't find a DJ right now? Is that what he means by that?
I think that's what he's meaning by that, and that's not unusual, because the way DJs don't market like they used to. It used to be to a point. You could send mail, you could send faxes, you can't.
Yeah, but everybody's a DJ nowadays, so
true.
That's the thing that I find hard to believe. Other than the fact that I do know a lot of people, their fall is smashed with people trying to fit weddings in. So maybe that could be it.
That could definitely
exactly.
be it.
And I think that right there is hitting the nail on the head for a lot of the schools when they're trying to reach out to people. That, especially like with proms, sometimes you can get away with a Friday or a Saturday. When it comes to homecoming, unless you're doing it after the game, which then you might run into potential curfew issues depending upon your state, most likely your homecoming dance is going to be on Saturday. And so that is like your prime wedding days, right. And you're already running into a prime wedding month of October, at least in our area. I can only imagine, like, when I send my list of people, like when I'm booked and I send my list of people out, I know half of them are completely full. The only ones that I have any hope for some people are some of the multi-ops who potentially might have so many people they could. But October is just rough like that.
Yeah, it's gonna be tough.
And especially this year, as you said, making up for dates, I could see where schools reaching out and going, I guess we'll find $100 DJ
for the right price. Y'all got to call me for the right price.
So let's transition over to the wedding area. That of course, as Dan said, there's most of us have got a pretty busy fall schedule. Usually our wedding season for us would have ended in October. I've talked to some DJs who they've got weddings booked all the way up through New Year's Eve. Almost consistently every weekend from now until then, even through deer hunting, which in Minnesota is like this holiday where nobody gets married because of, oh my gosh, there won't be a groomsman or, a guy in the room.
I don't know if it's still that way, but John, it was kind of the same way here that the high schools were not open on the first day of deer because they knew no one would show up. They still that way in your area?
Pretty
Dan?
much.
Yeah.
Pretty much. Yep. That's a big thing. It's tailed off the last few years, and I think part of that was we have a generation of kids who have learned how to shoot guns on, Grand Theft Auto type thing over going out and shooting 22s. And
also they're saying that you can catch it from the deer now. So
there's
have you seen those articles?
Yeah, unfortunately, we actually unfortunately, not the COVID such,
and the deer won't wear a mask. We've tried.
Yeah,
they just keep
coughing on me. Darn those deer. So the weddings.
You're gonna make Huey Lewis come out my nose.
So the weddings are an interesting thing. I've spent some time this past week talking to a half a dozen DJs who have been doing weddings, and the interesting aspect of is the crowd makeup. Typically when people do their invites, we know that they invite this big of a group, then the RSVPs is this big of a group, and then the ones that come are, just a couple of people don't come. So we go from inviting 300 people, then we get 200 RSVPs that they're going to make it, 150, 200, and then, 150, maybe 140 show up, 145. There's always a couple that don't. It seems that the trend this fall has been, the last few weeks, is that the crowds have been somewhere between 20 and 30% off of the RSVPs. That they have just just not showing. This past my wedding this past weekend, 45% didn't show, and they, as of 2 weeks ago, were coming. This is will be an interesting thing to see how this will affect not only our fall weddings, but going into 2022, because as we look at some of our friends out on Facebook, and we're seeing people who they're doing, and somebody made mention to the 30-person event. That's what we're seeing, more of those than I've ever seen before. I've got a friend that I've always envisioned, because when we bought speakers 10, 15 years ago, I bought the single 18 subs, and he's buying the quad 18 subs. He's buying his huge sound systems. And in the last half a dozen wedding pictures I've seen from him have all been a backyard with like 4 tables type of thing. And it's different locations, but it's been 30 people or under.
Does he take all the subs is the question.
No, I don't. I think he's gone to the Evolve. He's really gone to very similar to what Joe Bunn is doing, where he's got the Evolves and a couple of little lights, and then the nice podium type of a system. And I'm not sure, but Joe has a lot of pictures out there, so that's why I use Joe Bunn as an example, because a lot of you have seen those. So it's how weddings are going to be affected going in, and how couples are planning, going to be inquiring this fall. I've had, I think, my last 6 couples who are inquiring for last year. They love what we talked about. Their pricing, they're good with that, and they're like, okay, great. When do we have to sign a contract by? And it's like, well, typically I hold it for 2 weeks. We'd really like to sign the contract about like December 1st, somewhere in that ballpark, because we want to see how things are going to go this fall. And that this is, it isn't like from the same little area, like same community. It's one of them who lives 20 minutes from me, one of them that lives an hour from me, one of them that's up north an hour from, and they're like, we want to get things booked before Christmas, but we want to do it closer to Christmas, just because we want to see where we're going to be going.
How long would you then hold that date?
Oh, I won't hold it. I won't hold it. In that case, we didn't hold it at all. Okay. It's just basically getting the information to them so they have it, and then they can see what's available when we get to that time when they're ready to book. But I haven't had people inquiring so far out that have wanted to book. Usually they inquire, you charge way too much for a DJ who just to push play. And that's the end of the day. I don't have people saying we definitely want you, we want to book you, but we want to book you way over here, just because we're concerned. So it's a weird time. And I as they're talking about, and they're seeing the same things, except they're seeing it from a skeptical guest side of it, as they've been to weddings, and they're like, yeah, there's a lot of open tables at weddings, and I went through the food line, and there was like a lot of food there at the end that was not eaten because people weren't there.
So one of the things I saw on Facebook recently, and every once in a while this pops up, but I feel like it's popped up more recently, which was a couple or a couple of different people who sent an invoice to the people who didn't show for the plates that they paid for.
Yeah.
Because, like, you RSVP'd and then you didn't show, so I'm expecting you to reimburse us for that money. I think that, whether that's true or not, I'm sure it is at some point. I'm sure there's somebody out there who did it.
Yeah.
And I think everybody else might be an urban myth with it, but it definitely is out there. I will say, from my personal standpoint, I've seen both sides of it. So my wedding this past weekend, I don't think there was an empty seat. I don't think there was anybody who RSVP'd that didn't show. I mean, it was packed as far as the tables were concerned. Every table had their full set, it seemed like. 2 weeks before, I was at a venue who the night before, we found out grandma and half of the groom's family weren't showing up because somebody tested positive, and everybody else was that suddenly triggered everybody to go, I'm not going anywhere here. Even though that person was definitely staying home and was not around anybody that was at the wedding, there was a large group that from the groom's family. I mean, like, we felt really bad for the groom's family, because it's like, fortunately they didn't pick a side, right? But it was still one of those things where you could clearly see, like, a lot of family members were not around.
Yeah.
Imagine the new wedding thing. Are you on the COVID side or the non-COVID side, or the jab side or the non-jab side?
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised for again, for couples to pull something like that, or to, you know what, we're going to do that.
To arrange it. And it becomes a comfort thing. I mean, the Saturday's wedding, we were in a pole shed, beautiful for those of us who like pole sheds and like construction. It was really cool. Neat pole shed, but when they opened up all of the doors, all the overhead doors were opened up. So there was a breeze going through the whole time, and it was opened up because they had one set of grandparents who were going to be there, but they wanted to make it safe. So they had their tables were just a little bit spread out more than they typically would have been. And then they had the doors open. So you had that circulation. That's what they did to help make it as comfortable as possible for people. Because there were folks who came in and they had some tables that were outside under the lean-to on the side. And there were people who came and that's where they set up right away because they wanted to be, and then the overhead doors opened up a few minutes later, and then they're like, oh, well, now we'll come in. Otherwise, it's that comfort level, and that's going to be really a defining factor with people making decisions on what type of event, what size of event, how many people they're going to invite, whatever. And from our side of it, now, what do we do with that? Okay, do we become more flexible? Do we do a $100 down payment now that's fully refundable, and then in 60 days we need to get, or whatever, we need a non-refundable part of our retainer? I don't know how a person can works these things in to fill our calendar properly and protect ourselves and protect the business, and yet be flexible for clients.
I'm gonna play the hardball here for a moment, and maybe because I haven't run into that, but my philosophy when it comes to this is I'm gonna hold my line on my business. We're not talking. I would still have that ability. Listen, I'm sorry, but if we get into a shutdown situation, there's a clause there to help you out, right? But if we're talking about like you're just not really sure. Listen, I'm sorry, but next October or next September, I know is a time that I'm going to sell out. And so if you're not willing to move, then just be aware that when you decide you're going to be willing to move, it's going to be too late. And I would encourage them to go the wedding insurance route. I mean, that was one of the things that I heard a lot of people push, a few years ago, that there's insurance that they can get that is really not that expensive in the grand scheme of things, that if something happens shy of like the groom getting cold feet, type of mentality, that they can be covered and they can basically break even for all their expenses. Mm-hmm. So I really think that, that's going to be the direction to go to potentially help some of them. Listen, if you're that concerned, let's go ahead and, set things up. And let me put you in touch with some people that provide wedding insurance. And then you talk to them. And if you decide that's something you want to do, you handle that. I don't have anything about it, but I can help you find it. And then the pieces are in place that if something has to happen, it takes the risk out of their pocket, if you will.
Certainly a different world than it was 10 years ago, 20 years ago, John, isn't it?
It really is. And it's just interesting how when we used to start talking weddings, and what was going on with it, there was a level of continuity, even though, some were there was an East Coast wedding, there was a West Coast, and there was a Midwest wedding, and they were longer. But the reaction of guests and how you work the crowds and how you book the shows were very similar. And today it's so much different from one spot to another, depending upon what's going on. Just crazy.
I feel if you're not holding your line, if you're being, and I don't want to say you're being a jerk about it because I don't want to go that route, but I feel if you're being too flexible, you're opening yourself up for a problem for yourself. So let's assume for a second you go that $100 deposit and you say 60 days from now, that's when the non-refundable one is going to be due, and it's the balance or whatever normal deposit. In my viewpoint, I don't really see that being as any different than somebody who decides they're going to just wait 60 days and do it and book at that original non-refundable rate. I think it opens yourself up. For me, my fall weddings around here, they've gotten to the point where most people are booking almost a full year in advance for the fall weddings because they know things are going to be crazy. Yeah, there's the occasional last minute, but if my fall isn't solid by the end of December, I know that I'm going to have pockets when it comes around.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't want to put myself in the position where I hold this date for $100 that they might ask for back.
Yeah.
Only to then, because I feel that screws me just as much as me reserving or holding that date without any cash in hand, because there's no skin off their back if they back out. And that's where I feel it becomes important to kind of help guide them towards the things that would protect them rather than just kind of being the easy to work with guy that's going to hold everything for everybody.
And I think ultimately that's, the best advice that a person's we have a business to run. And my recommendation, what I'm planning to do is I'm not changing anything. It's like when you're ready to boot the contract, I'll send you the contract. It's valid for the 10 days to 2 weeks or however it would play out. You get the retainer back by then or pay it online, we're good. If you don't, we're going to have to see if it's available. I can't guarantee it after that particular point. They're talking retainers in the chat rooms there. I've seen some people talk about $100 down, and some people have talked to $200 down. Sean mentioned going to half. I've done a variety across the board from $100 up to $500. I've never done half myself. Very seldom has the retainer ever been a huge deal, because if they really want you, they've been planning a wedding, they've got some money set aside for it. You're not going to have a venue that comes in there and says, "Oh, well, our deposit's $2,000. Oh, I don't have that much." They're not going to say, "Well, you only have to give us $100 to hold it." They make sure you're getting a retainer so that, as Dan was saying, they've got some skin in the game. That they can't just say, "Well, it's only $100. I can walk away from $100 real quick."
That was a philosophy. One of my actually just down the street from me. We had a conversation one time. I was not charging that much for a retainer, and he came along the side and he said, "What happens if they walk away? You just lost $1,500 on a wedding, and you made $250 or whatever I was charging at the time for a retainer." He's like, there's no real gain for them, because if they're spending $6,000, $7,000, $10,000, $20,000 on a wedding, what's $250 really?
Mm-hmm.
If they decide to suddenly change some things up or go different directions. So he was the philosopher. I'm not to the half. I just, for me, it's easier for me to do a set figure, and then I don't have to do computing later on. I can just, this is where it's at.
And it is always kind of fun to be bringing in a little bit larger paycheck the day of than, having those weddings where they're all paid in advance and you go do the wedding, and at the end of it, it's like, oh yeah, the money's been sitting in the bank account, I can now put it into service. It's been sitting in the savings account. I mean, that was this past weekend. It was paid a month and a half ago, and it just kind of sat there. And at the end of the night, it's like, oh yeah, I don't get a check. I just transfer funds. And
so yeah, I'll give you a little hint if you're looking for something fun to do with it. So I require my payments 2 months in advance.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm always paid up, before the day of, and so what ends up happening was when the event's over, then I hit the ATM for the max that I can take out until I paid myself for the event. So I have a wad of cash that I have in my hand, and once it's all paid out, then I go to my bank and I put it in. But I actually feel like I got something from the event because I have all these 20s in my hand.
So lesson learned: follow Dan
right
after the wedding weekends. You got to be quick about it.
You got to catch him from the ATM in the front of the bank to the teller in the middle of the bank. But you get there, you can catch it.
I go to different banks, but still.
Oh, so that's extra time now.
Yeah, you get a couple blocks to meet me up.
All right, now I know, but I'm not going to drive through.
Sean asked about if we've been hearing about canceled weddings getting canceled right now. Yes, I've been hearing from numerous DJs. I personally haven't had a cancellation of a wedding this fall yet. We did have one that was going to be kind of a semi-last minute that they pulled the plug on it because of Delta. Others,
Yeah.
I've Mike Walter posted last week or was that he's been having a couple of cancellations here and there. A couple of other multis have made mention too. I don't know their numbers. They never said how many they've had, but it is happening. My feeling is that most people have got a workable plan for the fall. There's not going to be, I think Dan's situation where they were is wall to wall or in essence packed and every chair is full. I think there's fewer of those than there are putting 100 people into a room made for 300 people and spacing people out and going that route. I think that's where people are going with it. So they feel that they can move forward with it even if some of the guests aren't going to go.
Yeah.
John, can I throw something out on this?
Yeah.
Because we're almost out of time, but I want to get, we kind of talked about this off air too, because we're talking about where things go to the fall with us as DJs. Equipment-wise, we've not seen anything new, so we know equipment people aren't putting them out. I said that I have friends who have been looking for stuff, and they'll see it show up at different online places available, and then immediately, like an hour later, on back order. So there's just not a lot of products coming towards us. How do you think that will affect like when it gets down to your and my level of DJing, short of equipment, in case stuff, if you have a set of speakers that go, or lights that go, where is a DJ right now, or especially as we go on further with these shortages and stuff?
If you have gear that dies, you might be up a road right now, unless you go pick something up off Marketplace. And if you do, you're paying new price for it. Because I actually saw some stuff the other day, and it's like, oh my gosh, I should sell those controllers sitting up there. Well, as soon as I do, one of the other ones are going to die. I think for those of us who have a lot of questions this fall, typically that for some of us, we get to the end of the season and we're looking at, okay, we got our end of the year tax time, and it's like, I need to dump a little bit of money and put it into gear. This may not be the year for that. And I typically wouldn't say that because obviously a lot of these gear manufacturers are supporters, but most of those, they don't have new gear to sell. So for me to say, sit on that money for the winter or until we get past and you have more confidence, then look at upgrading for 2022's season. That's making sense to me right now. I think more than getting into homecoming. Usually we would go and we would dump $20,000 into new gear for homecoming season. This year, not going to do that. We may see what proms are, because we'd buy new lighting, change our light shows over in the fall, maybe upgrade sound system or whatever, and we go through. This year I'm not doing that. I'm going to maybe look at mid-year, or we may push it off into summer. I mean, this year I did all of my gear purchases back in June. And I did it based on wedding needs, buying another set of Evolve 50Ms, changing some of the light show, a little bit of the light show over, which I did that for homecoming dances. And it's like, if those don't go, but they're not going to go to waste. I mean, they'll be used eventually when we get back into school. So I'm not too concerned about it. But I think kind of, trying to hold on to money through the winter, through the fall, into the winter, see where things are going to pan out. Because we've got the COVID concern thing. We got this whole inflation thing. The economy is kind of in a situation, could go three different directions. It could stay the same. We could have a boom and people are like, "Woo, it's great," and everything's going well. Or we could have a slide. So being prepared for the worst and hoping for the best is I think probably our best plan for it. And that might mean that we're going to be picking up some 5 to 7 happy hour shows. And for those of you who are mainly full time, you might be doing a couple of hours and maybe you only making $100 for those 2 hours. That might be part of your fall and winter business plan. Maybe you're going to be marketing to letting schools know that, hey, I'm available. If you guys you want to do something at the last minute, an elementary dance, I can come in and pop in and do that. And you may not be making as much, you may not be bringing in as much gear, but it might be something to help fill that schedule a little bit. You might be going into doing trivia nights or karaoke nights, whatever. It's just, I think that flexibility is going to be a big thing as we go into this fall and this winter and see where we're going to be come 2022. Because I don't see this going away. The nurses and doctors up here in Minnesota are already starting to get whiff of this Lambda 1 that they're talking about, and they're really concerned about that one hitting around Christmas time, and that could be something that might make the Delta 1 look like it was a passive time. Even if they're completely wrong, they're talking about it, which means that there's a level of concern within their industry. And if there's a level of concern in their industry, it's probably something we shouldn't just blow off and say, yeah, it's not that important. So it's best to be
So we
prepared.
all should practice our chicken and vegetable bartering skills.
No, I think it's just this isn't the time to overextend. This is the time
Right.
to be a little more conservative.
I was looking at it from the point of view is that just if you needed it, a lot of the companies just don't have it. So
And there
even
is,
if you
yeah,
have
gear.
the money.
Yeah.
That was the thing that I'm looking at. Like I said, I have friends who have the money and want to buy something
And
from
just won't be
not
there.
from like these obscure companies, from mainstream companies that it's just not there and probably won't be until spring.
I think one of the things to focus on, especially the takeaway from what John was saying, is rather than focusing on, kind of going out, I'm going to get this great new product, and whether you have the idea of selling it before you get it or whatever, I think the idea of making that new purchase is something that maybe needs to just kind of hold on because of supply and demand. If nothing else, I mean, you don't want to try and sell this product for a homecoming or for a wedding that you have in October and expect that you might be able to get it in time. So I think
very true.
where your gear purchases are going to be best spent, especially during that time, is if you don't have a proper backup in place, if you don't have a proper piece of equipment to replace something that you use, that's where you need to get off your butt and go spend the money right now, or get on the wait list right now, so that way you have it in place. And if something goes down, you're not going, crap, how am I gonna do this wedding this Saturday? I can't overnight it because they don't have it to
It's not there.
overnight.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So take advantage of that process instead.
Good point. We gotta head. Now up next, hanging with Howie. I gotta click enter so it goes up into the chat. DJNTV.com/chill. Hanging with Howie. We'll start here in just a few moments. Howie's going to be doing an interview with I can't remember who. Travis. He'll explain everything. You guys bump in there. He'll have it. Tomorrow night it'll be Brian and Jay back on Tuesday night, and we're still not back with Ben yet. We'll be
Nothing till after Labor Day, but I will accept topic ideas if you guys want for this fall in the show, and shirts to wear during the shows.
So the last thing I'm putting is watching one of our trees. I left for an event and everything. We're fine at home, and I'm a half hour down the road, and a storm came out of nowhere and hits. And you'll see just as you're at a show and this happens and there's trees down there. I think that's it. We're ready to go.
Fits. You also saw the things to be. Enjoy hanging with Howie. Again, DJNTV.com/chill. You have yourself a wonderful night. We'll see you next time.